Hong Kong in the 1950s. The city was thriving after World War II. Neon lights are increasingly decorating the streets. Residential high-rises paint a more and more dense skyline year on year, and the entire region is still under British rule. The only officially recognized language is English, and much of the city's future is conceived and developed by the Brits who call Hong Kong their home. Already during this decade, the first ideas for a giant oceanarium are touted by Bromhall, the then Chief Scientific Officer of the Fisheries Unit of the University of Hong Kong. The idea sticks around the following decades. It is 1967. The Hong Kong government is looking for ways to make the city more attractive for tourism and to diversify its leisure offerings from shopping, nightlife, gambling, and sports. The government offers a free land grant of 69 hectares, 170 acres. The location? Aberdeen, a small fishing town on the other side of Mount Cameron from Hong Kong city centre. A large portion of the land can be found on the headland that reaches far into the South China Sea. It is 1971, when it is announced that the project will be helmed by the Hong Kong Jockey Club, one of the oldest institutions of Hong Kong. It was originally founded as a horse racing club, but since 1884 it has become a very rich non-profit organization, now active in lotteries, horse racing, sports betting, and investing back into the community. The Hong Kong Jockey Club invests 150 million Hong Kong dollars to get Ocean Park from the ground. Corrected for inflation, this comes down to $32.6 million in today's money. Kenneth S. Norris joins the project as the lead consultant, with Marineland Los Angeles, SeaWorld in San Diego, and Sea Life Park in Hawaii on his CV already. SeaWorld Orlando is soon in development too. The team gets to work. The park needs animals. This is not a success story, however. Throughout the 70s, the team captures wild animals all around Asia. Many of these animals die in captivity. Eventually, many of them are released before total disaster strikes. The team eventually chooses the method of dolphin drive hunting. It is a very controversial method of capturing dolphins, by herding them towards the shore, by luring and disorienting them with sound, and closing them in with nets. The team is very successful, and immediately sets an example for many other marine parks all over the world to follow this method for their own hunts. It is 1977, only 3 years after the Chinese language group was finally recognized as an official language in Hong Kong. The park is set to open after 5 years of construction and many delays because of bad weather, landslides, and fires. In the meantime, disease outbreaks amongst the park have allegedly cost the life of more than 40 animals already, a practice that would haunt the park throughout its first 14 years of operation. Many of the animals were unable to live in the harsh Hong Kong climate, and the park's technological efforts proved to be insufficient. The park isn't warmly received by everyone. Even the Prime Minister of Hong Kong expresses his criticism. The price for entry is quite high for the locals. Plus, the park cannot seem to get rid of its reputation for the high numbers of deaths amongst the animals. Since 1987, the park is no longer owned by the Hong Kong Jockey Club, but now an independent non-profit organization aiming to offer educational, recreational, and conservation activities to the public. The park will enjoy decades of expansions and year-on-year net profits and growth in visitor numbers. But this success is interrupted by the Asian financial crisis in 1997, and a number of big year-on-year losses will follow. It is this crisis that leads to the Hong Kong government to increasingly look for its next big attraction. Even though there has always been a strong emphasis on banking, business, and shopping and dining, the government now looks for ways to stay relevant for international tourism. Large sums of money are reserved to invest into the region's future. Now, no longer under British rule, but as a special administrative region of China. Ocean Park is in dire need of a boost to upgrade its aging infrastructure and facilities, and Hong Kong, in turn, needs to reinvent itself under new rule. This seems like an obvious scenario to heavily invest in the beloved park on the mountain summit. The following year, however, in 1998, the Hong Kong government proudly presents its plans to build a Disneyland on Lantau Island, just around the corner of the newly opened international airport. The actual deal stays under wraps until the very opening of the park. While Ocean Park is slowly financially recovering throughout the early 2000s, it is the 2003 SARS outbreak that totally cripples Hong Kong as a whole, and tourism comes to a halt. Ocean Park is even on the brink of full closure. Management is almost entirely replaced, and some big names are brought in to shift the focus towards a total strategic renewal. It is around this time that the Chinese government for the first time allows its mainland citizens to travel individually to Hong Kong, where this was first only possible with organized group travels. This new law effectively saves Ocean Park, with a new influx of tourists finding their way to the park's gates. And instead of treading carefully, the new profits that are made are immediately invested into the future. In 2005, the year that Disneyland is set to open its gates, Ocean Park reveals plans for a $5.55 billion Hong Kong dollar redevelopment plan, around $710 million in today's money. From 30 hectares, the park is set to expand to 43.8 hectares, so from 74 to 108 acres. The number of attractions will double, more animals will be on display, and a total redevelopment of the lowland area, renaming it to Waterfront, introduces thematic zones and a giant aquarium complex. Also, a completely redeveloped highland, changing it into the Summit, with clearly distinct themed lands, proves that Ocean Park chooses a more theme park-inspired route to echo what Disney does in their castle parks. A decade of vast expansions will follow. When the deal between the Hong Kong government and Disney is finally revealed, it turns out that there is a massive financial backing and a majority stake by the government. Besides only the park's construction, also land reclamation and infrastructural developments prove how much the government has betted on the Disney project. It was expected that Disneyland would generate a 25% drop in attendance for Ocean Park. But it turns out that the year-on-year attendance from 2005 to 2006 is barely impacted. If anything, Ocean Park sometimes rivals Hong Kong Disneyland's attendance numbers in the following years, while staying true to itself and without introducing any famous international IPs or Hollywood influences. In the peak years, the park draws in over 7 million guests annually. In some of these years, it even beats Disneyland's attendance. In recent years, the impressive expansions of Hong Kong Disneyland seem to be paying off. The park has generated record-breaking attendance numbers after opening the world of Frozen. 7.7 million visitors passed the gates in 2024. Ocean Park, on the other hand, even though it showed an annual growth of 33% in 2024, only reached an attendance of just over 3.1 million visitors, a far cry from its record years. Ocean Park's sentiment has shifted. It has been often associated with growing financial struggles and even bankruptcy in the latter decades. Massive debts have been compounding, and it never really recovered to the glory years after COVID. One thing is certain. Hong Kong Disneyland's success might have looked much different if it wasn't for Ocean Park. And in turn, Ocean Park would have never looked like it does now if it wasn't for Hong Kong Disneyland's appearance on the market. Maybe, just maybe, there is a place for both parks to coexist and enjoy incredible successes together.
Hello, and welcome to the TripOn podcast, in which we combine architecture, entertainment, and urban life.
My name is Lee.
My name is Alex.
And we are an architect and a themed entertainment professional. We both travel a lot, and we are interested in urban development and attractions. And this is a new show in the series, Entertainment.
But before we dive into this topic, let's quickly discuss our previous episode, which was about Disneyland Abu Dhabi.
Some insider information has popped up, which I think is very interesting to quickly discuss. So we discussed the announcement of Disneyland Abu Dhabi in our last 2 episodes. And I already mentioned in that episode that it was such a well-kept secret. And someone actually spoke out about it. The journalist I'm talking about, by the way, is Robert Niles. And he is an editor for Theme Park Insider. he received an invite, which was an email from Miral's press relations agency, and they were inviting him for the 15th anniversary celebration on Yas Island in Abu Dhabi. And the party was going to be already in 5 days, so you can imagine how crazy late that was.
Yeah, it's very last minute.
So, the thing was also that this journalist already was like, there's something fishy is going on. Normally it doesn't happen like this. So he started to be a bit suspicious. He actually started to reach out within his network, and he was already hearing sounds that Miral might be negotiating a deal or might have negotiated a deal with Disney. And he was already thinking they probably already signed it, because now they are inviting the press for this. They were still playing along, and he said that it was really, really well kept, even under wraps, leading up to that event, because it was still kind of sold in the media as if it was a 15th anniversary of Yas Island. Also what I mentioned in the episode, that I saw on Yas Island all the promotion for the 15th anniversary. He was one of the only reporters from the US who was able to of course fly out there, because many people with a 5 days notice were not able to make space in their schedule. And he said that there was especially a lot of Arabs and a lot of local press. And he was actually one of the only American, like US-based journalists out there. And that as soon as he arrived on the scene, he really knew that it was a Disney announcement, because he recognized some of the Disney executives over there. He mentions actually that Bob Iger was present, but he only came up on stage for the announcement. And of course, this turned out to be a massive Disney celebration with a drone show in the shapes of the Disney castle and with the big Mickey ears and everything. And it's also an interesting thought, like, how did they rehearse that? Why did no one see that? So they must have had a way of rehearsing the drone show somewhere in the desert or something, or I'm quite surprised that no one really found out about it.
Yeah, right, because there must have been some trials. It's such a big event that it has to be practiced before.
On social media, there were people who were, I think, cycling on Yas Island or cycling on the F1 track. And they were filming while they were cycling that there was a giant fireworks display, which they didn't know about. And then later they also found out that it was the Disney announcement. So I think it's a very interesting series of events. One interesting detail, by the way, about this is that later it was confirmed by the CEO of Miral that they signed the deal on April the 29th, and they announced it on May 7th, which means that it was signed just over a week before they did this big press event, and they literally sent out the invites for the press a day after they signed it. So you can imagine how tight the timelines were. First of all, they wanted to get the news out as quick as possible, obviously, otherwise it was leaking. And second of all, he also says that there were already rumors of Miral and Disney negotiating something together for years, like literally years. And I also mentioned in the Warner Bros. Episode that the CEO of Miral and Warner Brothers were already negotiating for 10 years before they actually opened the park. Yeah, fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting how it went and become real. This episode is actually going to be about entertainment, and specifically about Ocean Park Hong Kong. But it's going to have a totally different structure, because we are going to discuss a park that Lee had visited, and I'm going to interview him.
Yeah, Ocean Park Hong Kong, the second big themed entertainment venue in Hong Kong.
I would like to stick to our usual format, where we use the head, the heart and the base, where the head is about our first impression of the experience or of the place. The heart is actually the core of the experience, and this is also what is happening during the day. And the base is what we take away from the experience, which is actually the trail of that experience. And I would like to ask you, when did you visit the Ocean Park, and also what the context was?
Yeah, so we visited Hong Kong in April of 2024. We were visiting Hong Kong, of course, as a city trip, but we also had our first day visit already planned, which was a visit to Hong Kong Disneyland, something that we both really wanted to see. And that was an amazing experience. We were there the whole day. After that, I had a couple of days by myself in the park. So I made my way to the city center. I booked a hotel there, and I wasn't really far away from the actual mountain range that is on Hong Kong Island. And I also knew about this very iconic park that is on the top there, which is Ocean Park. So I planned also to go there for one day by myself.
Mm-hmm. And how familiar actually you were with Ocean Park before the visit?
Yeah, I was familiar with the park. It is a park with a very unique character. It is a park that is set on top of a mountain. And there are a couple of these typical mountain-based theme parks in the world. A couple of really famous ones are Dollywood, for example. But also Genting Skyworlds is a very famous one, which is a theme park in the mountains in Malaysia. And there's also Glenwood Adventure Park in the US. And then there is, of course, Ocean Park. Mm-hmm. It's a very old park. It already is around since 1977. So it did garner a bit of a reputation. And it is also quite well known that Ocean Park has an amazing location. And there are some truly spectacular views from there. So I think it's also interesting, especially for me, to see, of course, the contrast after Disneyland in Hong Kong, to see a more local park and to see what's the difference.
Mm-hmm. So let's move to the head, the first impression. And firstly, I would like to ask you, what was your first experience from the transport moment to the entrance, to the gate?
I have to also give you some context as to how this is situated in the city, because the city of Hong Kong is kind of a collection of islands. By the way, we really describe this also in our episode, The City of Hong Kong. So if it's helpful, you could also listen to that episode, and we go much more in depth about the city itself. I was actually staying on the Hong Kong island. So this is an island that is in the sea. And I was staying on the side of Victoria Harbour. So you have a really beautiful view on the city skyline. But the Ocean Park is on that island, and it is actually on the other side of what is called Mount Cameron. So I had to take a taxi for that in the early morning. That was the quickest way of getting to the park. There is also public transport and stuff like that, but for me the taxi was the easiest way.
Were there any challenges in reaching the park or getting the tickets?
No, not really. It was actually really easy. Hong Kong in general is very easy to move around in, and there is generally a very, very good public transport and also a lot of taxis. So it was really easy to get there. There is this highway called the One. The One is actually taking you under Mount Cameron through really big tunnels. So I was quite surprised actually by how long that tunnel even is.
How did you get to the Ocean Park entrance?
Yeah, Ocean Park is pretty impressive actually in terms of its location and its entrance. It's very clearly part of the environment, like the urban environment there. It's very much set up for big crowds, which I think is also necessary when it's very busy. But the taxi stand was kind of like on ground level, so on the level of the road. And then you had to make your way up to a really big square in front of the entrance, which is called the Ocean Square. Very original. There's a lot of ocean everywhere. Yeah. And there at the Ocean Square, it is undeniable that you're going to enter a big park, because over there, you know, you have all those greeneries, dividers, dividing walls, a bunch of seating around it, and there is also very obviously a very big entrance in front of you. There's this typical, kind of like a typical language there of flowy lines with white and blue and with ceramic tiles. And there's a big Ocean Park logo hanging from a steel canopy. And I mean, it shouts that that's the entrance.
And did you purchase your ticket online or you bought it at the spot?
No, I actually bought it there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how was the wayfinding and the guest flow?
Yeah, I was there when it was not crazy busy, actually. So the square was not really full of people or anything. But still, it has a very clear spatial design. Everything speaks for itself. This entrance also that you see now, so the current entrance of Ocean Park, is from a later investment. So I don't know how it was before, but this is a very clearly laid out public space. And then the entrance zone, it's called Aqua City. And that is kind of a little main street setup, let's say, where there is mainly retail around you. Mm-hmm. And then there is the Aqua City Lagoon, and that is a body of water in the middle. And this area, this whole zone, you can see that this is a later investment for Ocean Park because that doesn't feel like 70s. That feels more modern. And I was quite unfamiliar, of course, with the park, so I didn't also really read up on it. But I could also see that zone is very much also set up for an end show. And obviously that is a shopping and dining area, mainly shopping actually. A lot of big retail stores over there.
I would like to move to the next part, which is the heart, so the very core of the experience.
I first made my way through, of course, Aqua City. It kind of bends to the left, so it's kind of an L shape, the Aqua City zone. And in the back of that zone, in the beginning, there is the giant aquarium complex, which I didn't want to visit yet. I wanted to make my way first to the outdoor attractions.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about your experience, because from what I know, Ocean Park is known for its division between the waterfront and the summit, and how you chose to make your way through the park.
Yeah, so Ocean Park is definitely very much a split up park. Those two areas of the park are not even connected by any pathway or anything. So you do have to make use of a form of transportation to make your way from what is called now the waterfront, which is the area after the entrance. So basically the lower level, and the summit, which is the higher level. And the summit is a very great reason already to visit the park because it's really impressive, the views that you have from up there. The ways of moving from the waterfront to the summit is either by a double cable car line, or you make use of the funicular system. So it's kind of like a train that runs through a mountain. First of all, I would have to mention that you might be fooled in the case of Ocean Park, thinking that the waterfront area and the summit are pretty close together, because when you look at the park map, it seems like they are very close together and they're only like separated by a small strip of greenery. But in reality, the waterfront area is really far from the summit. I actually checked it on Google Maps. I saw that when you pull a line, when you draw a line and you measure from the waterfront station until the summit station of the cable car, you're actually traveling for 1.5 kilometers in a straight line. So that's really far for a park or a zoo to be divided like that. But it immediately also proves that the cable car ride is a very nice experience. Like, you are hanging, of course, above a very lush and green, I would even say a very untouched nature that you can see from the cable car. The waterfront area of the park is not even that big, and also the zones are pretty compact. Everything is pretty packed together. But the summit area of the park is maybe even a bit too spread out, because there's a lot of walking up there. But also it's really nice to be there, and it's very green, and it offers quite a lot of amazing views. But in general, I would say that it feels like two totally different parks, to be honest. The lower level, the waterfront, is also very much embedded inside an urban area. So you can see from the park, you can see residential towers all around you. It reminded me a little bit of Universal Studios in Japan, where you also have that the park is like situated in an urban environment, which is completely impossible to see in Disneyland. In Disneyland, you are very secluded and you have almost no view on Hong Kong. And the summit is completely a green surrounding, and from the summit you have a completely different atmosphere, and you don't really see the surrounding urban development, but you're actually looking down on urban developments of Hong Kong. So it's a completely different environment.
How did the day unfold when you decided to already explore the different zones?
Yeah, so I think I arrived somewhere between 11:30 and 12 o'clock. And I didn't spend a lot of time in the waterfront area, to be honest, because I kind of quickly wanted to make my way to the summit, where the outdoor attractions are more situated. And also the coasters are there. That's actually the only coasters are there. So I decided to make my way to the cable car station, which is in a zone, like a little themed zone, which is called Old Hong Kong. And that's a rather small themed area, actually, but it was very charming, I have to say. It portrays Hong Kong from the 60s. And it is also decorated with neon lights. So the typical like neon lights that you can still remember from the old photos of Hong Kong. Something that you don't really see in Hong Kong itself anymore. So it was really special to see that. I didn't see it in the dark though. I can imagine that it looks really impressive in the dark. So I saw it, of course, by day.
And which attractions did you do?
Yeah, first I think you can consider the cable car already an attraction, to be honest.
For sure. It's kind of an experience.
Yeah, definitely. It's really worth it to go to this park already for the cable car, I have to say. And yeah, the cable car is taking you along the mountain. So it's taking you kind of left of the mountain. So it's completely different from the funicular. The funicular is, of course, entirely in the mountain. So it's in a big tunnel. And it's really impressive to see the very green and lush mountainous environment of Hong Kong from the cable car. And this cable car takes you to the summit. And then already when you look up, from the cable cars, then you can already see a big coaster standing there on the summit, which is pretty impressive. So yeah, it also helps with the excitement, I guess. It kind of makes you want to ride the coaster, to be honest, when you see it there, on top. But it's a very relaxing experience, I have to say. It's very chill. It's very nice to be in those cable cars. And then the other one, so the funicular, I chose to actually take the funicular down. So I wanted to go up by cable car and down by funicular. The funicular is also, you can also say that it's an attraction. I've done a couple of funiculars in my life, but this is definitely the most themed one that I've ever seen. The trains look very nice. They have a really beautiful shape. It gives a bit of a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea vibe. So it's a bit steampunk styled submarine. It reminded me a little bit of Tokyo Disney Sea, of the mysterious island zone there, where they also have a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea theme and attraction, but definitely not on the same level of quality. So yeah, it had this vibe, but it wasn't that beautiful. And then when you make your way to the summit, I mean, that's where all the amusement rides are. So that's where you have the carousels and the coasters and a bunch of classics that you would expect in an amusement park. So that's where I did ride the two coasters, actually. And I think I did ride a couple of flat rides also, but to be honest, they are not that special in itself. Maybe the location is special, but the rides are not that special overall.
Which attraction you would say is the main attraction in the park?
Well, from a rides perspective, it is definitely the Hair Raiser coaster. That's a floorless B&M coaster. B&M is Bolliger & Mabillard from Switzerland. It's a pretty famous coaster supplier. And it was my first floorless coaster. So you have to imagine you're not really sitting in a seat. You're more sitting on a seat, and your legs are basically hanging. So you don't have a floor under you. And I have to say that was a really impressive coaster, if only for its location, because it is really high on the mountain. And it did remind me a little bit of Shambhala in Portaventura in Salau, which is also a B&M coaster situated on the hill with view on the open sea. But I think it is a bit more spectacular how this one is laid out, because from what I found, the highest point in the park is actually 200 plus meters above sea level. So that's pretty impressive.
That's pretty high.
Yeah, and then next to the Hair Raiser, there is also a Mach-powered coaster, a very common coaster in many places. This is called Arctic Blast. It's not a bad coaster, to be honest, but it's also not the smoothest experience. It's fun, but it wasn't that beautiful or anything. It wasn't that spectacular. Again, the location is probably more important than the ride itself. An interesting fact is that the park has 2 more coasters actually standing. So in total, it has 4 coasters listed. There is a classic aero coaster, which is called Dragon, but this coaster has been SBNO. Do you know that term, SBNO?
SBNO, though?
Standing but not operating.
Decoration.
So, yeah, so the coaster is still standing there, but it was completely overgrown by trees and bushes. So I was like, oh shit, it's closed,
It would be good for the Halloween,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it has a very eerie feel to it, that it's just, it's a bit scary how it looks. But it is apparently closed since 2022. There's another coaster, which is situated much lower on the other side of the mountain. So it is very visible from the upper levels. And this is a Zamperla mine train coaster. And this coaster is partly built in a steel dome structure. So it looked very interesting, but it has been SBNO, so standing but not operating, also since 2022. Unfortunately, it has been rumored that the park was struggling financially so much that they had to close these both down, and it looks like they're not really going to reopen.
Do you think it was because of the operations or because of the maintenance?
Well, I can only imagine how expensive the maintenance is for a park like this. And, reaching those two coasters must be pretty hard, I guess, with like equipment and stuff like that, because both of them are situated on the mountainside, which is actually to open sea. And it is also quite known that coasters at open sea are always suffering a bit more because of the
climate and
the
the
wind.
sea salt, I think, also is damaging a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I really wonder if they're going to reopen. I would be surprised because they have been standing since 2022 without operating, and that's not good for a coaster also normally.
Mm-hmm. Which attractions did stand out in terms of storytelling or theming?
Well, I have to say that Ocean Park is not a very good theme park, to be honest. In terms of the theming and the decoration and storytelling, far from the level of Disney, to be honest. There are themed lands and each land has its like dedicated attractions and stuff like that, but it never really goes further than decoration. There's just a inherent lack of real storytelling or, like atmosphere and stuff like that. It's just not a great theme park, to be honest. I would say it's more like an amusement park with kind of a themed division.
Then how well do the themed areas communicate their narrative or concept?
Yeah, I'm a bit torn on this. You can see that there is a very high level of customization, which is also something we often mention in the podcast. So each themed area feels inherently different. They do try to make a clear separation in the overall design language, in the architectural approach, or in the pavement or pathways. But within each zone, it can be very chaotic. So there's a lot of things happening, a lot of different signs and statues and trash bins and marquees and a lot of stickers everywhere. Mm-hmm. So I would say that, yes, there is a lot of theming, which I would rather call in many places more decoration. To be honest. Yeah, it's not really, a high level of theming.
So it's some props here and there.
There is rock art or rock work, but it's not really authentic in many places. And there's also a lot of fiberglass, but it's not the highest level fiberglass. So yeah, for example, the Polar Adventure, which is the icy themed area all the way on the summit. Yes, it looks icy and snowy, but it's generally pretty ugly, I would say. So it never feels like a authentic environment. It always feels like a very amusement park approach to a theme. The whole park feels very artificial, so it never truly immerses, to be honest. At the summit, I would say that those themed lands are very splintered. The themed lands are very small. For example, the rainforest area only has essentially one ride, which is only the river rafting ride. Yeah, I think in terms of theming, it's lacking a bit. The park also has no real dark rides. And I think that's also, something that a true theme park really needs. If you don't count the funicular, which has a bit of show in it, but I wouldn't really call that a dark ride. It feels in this park that any of the indoor experiences or most of the indoor experiences or the roofed experiences are generally animal exhibits. Because, let's not forget that it's also still a zoo. So it does feel more like this is a zoo with amusement rides added to it rather than a real theme park. I think the most immersive environment, so the environment where they do the most with music and sound and lighting and stuff, is actually the Grand Aquarium. There is some rock work there. There is some atmospheric music. There are some, thematic approaches there. So you have some division also over there. But it's not really a single thematic direction, I would say. So overall, the park is quite serious. It's a bit sober also in general. I would say the aquarium is also quite serious. It has some dreamy music in some places over there, but sometimes also in typical Chinese fashion, it's all of a sudden mixed with cute characters here and there, or, you know, like stickers with smiling sharks and stuff like that. So, yeah.
It's a mix in a way.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a bad aquarium in any way, but it's you know, maybe also we are a bit spoiled because after visiting, for example, something like SeaWorld in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, or the Burgers Zoo. Yeah,
Burgers Zoo in the Netherlands, exactly. So that level of theming you will not find in Ocean Park. It's not like that. It's never a fully encompassing themed environment. It's mostly like touches of theming here and there. There is one attraction that attempts storytelling, I would say. It's a very weird attraction, and this is actually a walk-through horror house. It's called 180 Laboratory, and it is, I think, a leftover or a permanent horror house which is normally used for the Halloween season. And it was a classic horror laboratory where, you know, an experiment has gone wrong and you have to walk through, you know, like spaces with blood and with gore and all that stuff. And yeah, it wasn't really great or memorable, to be honest.
And how would you assess the operational efficiency of the park?
Yeah, I think it was pretty good. Overall, the staff was very friendly. I also think that the wait time at the rides was doable. It wasn't a quiet day, but it was also not a really busy day when I was there. But it seemed very consistently moving, I would say. So the main attractions, the Hair Raiser and the Arctic Blast, so the two coasters on the summit, I didn't wait very long over there, and it seemed also pretty well arranged with like locker systems, and also the operators were very helpful. And even though they didn't always speak fluent English, they did try to understand you, and they did try to speak English to you. So yeah, no complaints there.
So the overall signage and navigation within the park as an international visitor was okay for you?
Because this park is a very particular layout, it is sometimes challenging to navigate through it. Although the park map is pretty clear, they did a good job with explaining where you can find things. I do have to give props for the directional signing though, because on every Y crossing or on every split in a pathway, there was a very clear directional sign pointing out the highlights of that area. So that is very well done. It is, however, a park with a lot of elements mixed together. So this is maybe also a typical Chinese, I would say. There's a lot of stuff, you know, happening around you. There's a lot of marquees and statues and photo ops and signing and posters, and sometimes there's even a temporary setup for something. So a lot of stuff is asking your attention. So that does, you know, generally drown out the practical signing a little bit here and there. But overall, I think it is very doable. The only thing is that on the summit, you do walk quite a lot because the stuff is pretty spread out. The more you go down, so the summit itself, so on top, it is very compact. But then when you actually go down the mountain, obviously that's kind of the character of a mountain. There's a lot of just long pathways and winding pathways here and there. And
so you do a lot of steps in the park.
Yeah, a lot of steps. And I think also maybe because the park didn't develop there as much as it did in other places. So on the side of the open sea, there, you know, stuff is just very spread out. So you have just long pathways, and you know, it's not a bad thing because it's very green and it's a very nice environment to be in. But
it's quite of a walk.
A lot of walking, yeah.
I also read that the Ocean Park is also positioned as an education destination. And how well is marine education integrated into the guest experience?
There is definitely a big emphasis on wildlife preservation. So there are a lot of references to the OPCF, which is the Ocean Park Conservation Foundation. That is a foundation that is protecting marine life. Overall, you also see that there is a lot of information on signing and on displays around animals. So it is kind of a classic zoo, but I think they also try to give a lot of information about what people are looking at. And what I liked about it is that they also refer a lot of stuff to the local region. So also a lot of stuff is aimed for the Hong Kong and the Asian environment. However, I think the park is kind of has an internal identity crisis, I would say, because the amusement aspect of it is right next to the educational aspect of it. So to give you one example, the Polar Adventure Zone, so this icy area that I was describing earlier on the summit, you have there the amusement park approach where everything looks very cartoony, and you have like fiberglass penguins and stuff, and fiberglass polar bears and stuff. And then you walk into a building, and then there is the actual penguin enclosure. So there you can see the penguins, and you can see the Arctic foxes and stuff like that. But it's all existing right next to each other. It doesn't really naturally
transition,
flow or transition. Yeah. To have the animal enclosures or the animal on display just throughout the entire thing. Like, for example, there is also animals being displayed inside the layout of the water ride. So you can actually walk over the water ride, and then you have like a menagerie or some animals over there. And this happens here and there in the park, that you have the animals on display within the attraction, the amusement park, the attractions. Yeah.
And how is the space for the animals? How are the enclosures?
Overall, I think the park is pretty dated when it comes to its zoo aspect, let's say. I think, there is a way better approach to animals in a zoo nowadays. And yeah, I didn't feel too comfortable with everything that I saw, to be honest.
Okay, that kind of was my question. And did you watch any live show?
Well, yes. I visited what is called Dolphin Explorations, which is a show in the largest theater in the park. It's an amphitheater, which is situated on the side of the mountain. As an audience, you have a pretty spectacular view over the South China Sea. So you look actually over where the show is being performed, and you have a view over the South China Sea with the many ships and the islands. But I have to admit, it's a classic dolphin show. So there's a group of dolphins that are doing tricks, that are waving, that are jumping. And it feels a bit wrong nowadays, to be honest, because those dolphin shows are really disappearing all over the world. There's a very good reason for that, And I was analyzing a bit the areas and the environment, and it looks like the dolphins don't really have a natural environment to live in. It seems like it has a very swimming pool approach to the architecture and the enclosures of the animals. So I don't know. I have the feeling that the dolphins didn't have that much living space, especially because, of course, it's on the side of a mountain, so they don't really have a big lake or anything that they can go to. So it didn't really feel natural.
And is there any end show in the park?
Yeah, there is an end show, actually, which is called Gala of Lights, and it looks pretty spectacular. I wasn't there for the ending of the park, actually, because I stayed around, I would say, 5.5 hours, I think, in total. And this end show is being held on this in Aqua City, so on this lagoon over there. But I have seen some videos online, and it looks pretty impressive. They normally combine like live performers there with projection and also some fireworks and fountains.
How was the retail and the food experience in the park? Were there diverse options, some strong theming, or signature items?
I did buy some snacks and drinks, but I didn't really have like a big meal or dinner over there. I chose for that to go back to the city center. I really wanted to go back to the city center of Hong Kong and have a really nice dinner over there. I did buy, however, I don't know why I remember this, but I did buy a caramel popcorn in the Thrill Mountain Zone, I think it was. And to be honest, that was the best caramel popcorn I ever had in my life. It was really good. I think I even bought a second one. It was very fresh, so it was still warm. And I think that's also the reason why I bought it, because I saw that they were making it. And that was a really nice caramel popcorn. I also remember that I took fresh orange juice from vending machines because there are several vending machines throughout the park, which also really reminds me of Japan, of Tokyo and Osaka. And this was also a really, really good fresh orange juice. Maybe it's also because it was a very warm day and I really needed something to drink. I think I did buy another snack somewhere or a sandwich or something, but I don't really remember that anymore.
And do they have their own mascot or a character in the park? Some IP maybe?
Yeah, definitely. The main mascot of the park is called Whiskers, and he is a seal, I think. He was introduced in 2000, and he is a seal in a sailor suit. You can still, if you look up the logo of Ocean Park, you can still see him there. He's very prominent in the logo. And there was also next to him a parrot called Chief, and there was also a dolphin called Swift, and a red panda called Red. And I think also there were always, next to Whiskers, there were also always 4 giant pandas, like a panda family. And several other mascots were there, but I think they slowly disappeared to the background. The original appearance of Whiskers was of him as a very masculine sailor. But I did also see a couple of Whiskers appearances that looked completely different. So I think they changed his look over time. There was also a completely different form of... I didn't initially notice even that it was also Whiskers, but I saw a completely different family of characters. And I was looking into that, and it seems like there was a complete redesign of Whiskers in 2015. So you have Whiskers, and the redesigned version of Whiskers, and there's also Red, the red panda, who's still there with him. But they also introduced a completely new set of characters. So they introduced Fluffy, which is an Arctic fox, Mark the shark, Justin the dolphin, and Bao Bao the panda, and Doggy the penguin. And together, this group is called Whiskers and Friends. And it's apparently also a much more multimedia approach because Whisker and Friends also have like small adventures that are animated. So they also appear as 3D animated figures. And this new version of the mascot family is very, very different in style. It looks much more cuddly and it's cutified. And there's also a whole group of new walking character mascots. So the old Whiskers, I don't think he appears like that anymore in the park. So the new Whiskers looks much more like a plushie now. So it's a much more cuddly character. And I've seen in the park, Fluffy, so the Arctic fox. And Fluffy was very popular with the people. So they all look very cute and I would say kawaii, of course, which is a Japanese term, but I think they really looked at the Japanese characters. Okay. Also an important thing to mention is that Whiskers Harbor, which is a kids zone, it opened in 2010. And you can see that this zone is much more in the cartoony style and all the new mascots you can find all throughout this zone. So it contains playgrounds and family and kids rides and indoor play area. But also a couple of animal enclosures are there. Like there's one place that is called the Little Meerkat and Giant Tortoise Adventure. And you can just walk in and you can see meerkats, which are very cute, by the way. I do think, however, that the park suffers from something similar as what we noticed in Global Village in Dubai, which is that there are so many stimuli in the park, and there seem to be also a lot of random characters here and there, which is something that you see often in Asia, that it does drown out Whiskers and Friends a little bit. So I think that's something that we notice, maybe also you notice that, Alex, in Japan, where a lot of things have a face.
Yeah.
So
even the food has the face,
The food has faces, exactly. If you go to a dumpling restaurant, you have a dumpling with a smiley face or something, as a mascot.
Or you have the coffee with the shape of your dog.
Yeah, I recognized it from Japan, but I also think that this happens in China and in this case in Hong Kong, that it naturally just distracts from your main mascots and characters. And I saw so many characters in the park that I was sometimes a bit lost, like, who's the main character over here? Yeah.
Maybe there is a demand for many characters, but yeah.
One interesting thing, which I saw here, but I think you can see that in many places in China, is that they absolutely adore the panda. The panda, I don't know if you know the importance of the panda, so the real panda, in relation to China and international relations, like foreign affairs. Do you know the story about it?
No.
So it's very interesting because every giant panda in the world, it doesn't matter where you are, every giant panda belongs to China. So all of the giant pandas are owned by China. And the giant panda as an animal, it is actually a form of China as a nation to acknowledge a relation with another nation.
Oh.
So if a country has giant pandas in a zoo, it means that this country has a good relationship with China. And then the Chinese government basically lends you the pandas or like borrows you the pandas for a period of time. It's often not even, for a very long time. And then it often follows after either like an international trade deal or something that happened on the political stage. The panda is so important. And you could also see it here in this park. The pandas have their own hall, like their own indoor. And to get into that indoor, you have to actually get a ticket and you have to wait in line. So you have a certain like trail that kind of leads past the pandas. And they are incredibly famous over here also. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the giant panda in general, if you would ask me, does the park have any mascots? I would say, yeah, the panda is always, in any Chinese zoo or any Chinese park, I think the panda is always a very important character.
Okay, that's a very interesting story, actually, about the zoos taking the pandas from China. Mm-hmm.
They're very protected and they're very important for the nation of China. Mm-hmm. And you can also see that if a country or if a zoo gets the giant pandas from China, it is always a big happening. People really go there, like in massive amounts of visitors go there just to see them. Mm-hmm. So for example, in the Netherlands, I don't know how it is in Poland, but in the Netherlands, there are 2 giant pandas in one zoo. It's called Ouwehands Zoo. And they arrived in 2017 as a part of a collaboration between the Dutch and the Chinese government. And they are expected to stay for 15 years. And yeah, it's a big thing. It's a very big gesture when a country has access to the giant panda, like the actual animal itself.
And I just quickly checked how is the situation in Poland about the giant panda. And unfortunately, there is no Polish zoo that owns or has a collection of the giant panda. The main reason why is because it's a complicated ownership, like you mentioned. So it's owned by the Chinese government. And they lend them to the zoos, but for a very big price, which might even be around millions of dollars yearly.
I don't know if the numbers are trustworthy, but it says that there's only 25 zoos in the entire world that have giant pandas. Mm-hmm. So also here in Ocean Park, the pandas are a very, very important attraction for the visitors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially that there is a connection between Hong Kong and China.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's move to the next part, which is the trail, so the very base of the experience. And I have just one simple question to you. What will you remember from the visit?
Definitely the views. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also rode a viewing tower. So it's called the Ocean View Tower, which is a classic viewing tower ride where you're basically doing a 360 spin while it goes up and down. To be on this viewing tower on top of a mountain like that, it's extra special.
Mm-hmm. Now I'd like to move to the next part, which is the pro view as a theme park professional. What was your view to the visit?
First of all, it was really relaxing to visit the park alone. And it's completely different also. I was much more observing the guests in the park. And I was much more experiencing the park from an exploration level. And it was really special to see also how visitors experience the park. But in general, I would say that, from a professional point of view, I have a hard time calling this a theme park.
So from the professional point of view, what are Ocean Park's biggest strengths as a, let's say, more amusement park?
Absolutely, number one is the location. It is truly a dream of a location, and it's also quite a good master plan, to be honest. Mm-hmm. It's a very impressive project from a construction point of view. Imagine the challenges of building this kind of stuff on a mountain. The pathways are often curved, So there's a very diverse park circulation. So there's a very diverse way of getting around the park. It's very green overall. So the pathways are often lined with a very lush and green environment.
Is there any water body or a lake or a river or maybe a small waterfall in the park?
Yeah, there are water bodies in the park. There's one trail in the park, which the beginning of that trail was open because there are several trails in the park which you can visit. So there is a zone which is called Amazing Asian Animals. A very good name for a zone. There are two trails over there. There is the Emerald Trail and the Eco Trail. During my visit, the Emerald Trail was closed, unfortunately. But apparently that is a trail that takes you into the foresty area, and there's also a body of water there. And from what I heard, that is a very impressive trail that actually feels the most natural. But unfortunately, like I said, it was closed, so I wasn't able to walk that trail. Obviously, there is the water right on the summit. And that is definitely a place where there is, waterfalls and water splashing. And I also rode that one. I was very wet coming out of that thing, but it was a very warm day, so I was not complaining about it. But other than that ride, it is quite low on the amount of water bodies and flowing water, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay. And do you have maybe more strengths of the park?
A really big strength of the park is definitely, I think, the fact that already they have such an impressive amount of aquariums in the park. So it does very much live up to the name Ocean Park. And there are some aquariums that are really well done. There's one aquarium that I remember, which is kind of a display of several types of jellyfish. And that was very glow in the dark, the way it was set up. It was very mesmerizing. And it was really, really nice to see. Also, they have a couple of really impressive sharks in the aquariums, like truly terrifying looking sharks, like how you expect a shark to look, with those big open eyes and a lot of teeth. So I think the aquariums are a strength of the park. I think that's the best aspect for, let's say, the animal exhibits. But when if I could say another weakness, the summit, and then especially the Thrill Mountain area of the park, which is decorated like a classic amusement park. So a bit like a boardwalk park, like you would have them in New York and in Sydney and in Melbourne, for example. I would even say it's pretty ugly in terms of its design language and its execution. The Thrill Mountain area, but also the Polar Adventure Zone, for me, that's the perfect place for an after-hours horror experience. So you could imagine that you could record there a horror film in the dark. There's a lot of, especially in the Thrill Mountain area, a lot of wacky clowns and colors and a lot of faces. And I can totally imagine a horror film being shot there, to be honest. So yeah, that's definitely a weakness, I would say.
How do you actually see Ocean Park positioned within the competitive theme park landscape, especially against Hong Kong Disneyland, which is just next?
Well, it cannot be underestimated that the Hong Kong tourism in general is highly dependent on mainland China. I looked into it, and throughout the years, somewhere between 60 to 80% of the total tourists arriving in Hong Kong was coming from mainland China. So that is a very important demographic also for Ocean Park. It does appear that the Chinese economy has been weaker lately, and this immediately reflects in the tourism in Hong Kong. Apparently what is happening is that even if the number of tourists have been improving in Hong Kong since COVID, which of course took some time, apparently now there's much less spent per capita by tourists from China in Hong Kong. This has to do with the fact that Hong Kong is relatively expensive for the people from mainland China, but also because there are a lot of other cities in China that have seen massive growth of tourism, even tourism from Hong Kong to those cities, simply because China has such a well laid out infrastructure and public transport network that it's apparently really easy for people from Hong Kong to get to other big cities. It will only take them 15 to 30 minutes to get to a couple of other really big cities in the surroundings, which have a cost of living and a general overall cost for products and consumer goods, which is apparently half of Hong Kong's prices. So this, of course, reflects also in the amount of tourists coming and the amount of people that are potential visitors to the theme parks. There is also another park that opened in the 80s, which is part of the Chimelong Group, a very famous Chinese group of amusement parks, zoos, theme parks, resorts, water parks, etc. One of the main parks from this group is in Guangzhou. And this park is actually also an animal/amusement park with a water park next to it. So it is a very similar offer as Ocean Park, a very big competitor apparently. And I think the geographic situation also plays a role here. Hong Kong Disneyland is on Lantau Island. Lantau Island is the island where the new international airport is since the end of the 90s. It is a little bit further, like a little bit more traveling to get to the city of Hong Kong, but it's especially a longer trip to get to Hong Kong Island from the new airport. And don't forget that the government has a majority stake in Hong Kong Disneyland. So it's really in their best interest that park is doing well. And it seems like the government has been putting all of their attention on Hong Kong Disneyland, and it really starts to pay off. You know, they had a record year last year. But also, I think one important thing to mention is that in the meantime, in 2016, Shanghai Disneyland opened right on mainland China. Even though it started off with a relatively low number of 5.6 million visitors in the first year, apparently Shanghai Disneyland in 2023 drew in 14 million visitors, which is a very good number. And it appears that Shanghai Disneyland is only getting more and more popular. So I think the landscape has increasingly become more difficult for Ocean Park to prove themselves. Mm-hmm. And I think also there is a response because, again, Ocean Park has announced that they're going to do a massive investment to reshape the park for the future. So I cannot wait to see what they want to do. And I really, really hope that they differentiate themselves and that they offer something that is, you know, playing with the fact that it's such a unique park in such a unique location. I hope that they can also do something with the legacy, so the fact that they are already old and traditional, and hopefully also something that is very, very Hong Kong, something really local and cultural. So yeah, I'm very curious to that.
Where do you see weaknesses?
For me, clearly this park is a very mixed bag when it comes to its look and overall quality. It seems that over time there have been major investments. So yes, the park has developed and there has been innovations and it has expanded a lot. But it seems like the park is also pretty random, you know, in many aspects. I think the park has a location and a master plan to be very jealous of. I think every park owner or every master planner looks at this and thinks, oh my God, what you can do with this place, you know. It's a very, very impressive location and master plan. But I think overall the park lacks in a certain form of art direction. There is no clear artistic direction. I think it lacks maybe in artistic leadership and a certain vision that ties the whole thing together. It is a bit chaotic when it comes to its design language and colors and styles and modes of communication. Like I mentioned earlier, the characters are all over the place, but also overall the quality level of production. And that is really sad to see because I think the blueprint is there and you can really clearly see that this could truly be an amazing park, like really, really amazing. Like it's very unique on the world scale of theme parks or on the world scale of amusement parks or zoos even. It has even a couple of steps up from Disneyland, I think, because what we liked about Disneyland is that Disneyland has this beautiful mountain range as the backdrop. But here in Ocean Park, you don't have the mountain as a backdrop. You're actually on the mountain. And it's almost sad that the mountain is not really a theme in Ocean Park. I would say that could be a much more important aspect of the park itself. You can also really clearly read the year rings in Ocean Park, I would say, a bit like an old tree. There are some obvious areas that are very dated. They have a very pragmatic look to them, almost no decoration. And the only additions to the concrete and steel is sometimes only in the form of stickers or posters or signs. And I would say that sometimes the park feels a bit like a football stadium in terms of its environment. And that's not a compliment.
No. So yeah, I guess the upkeep is not on the highest level.
Yeah, I noticed that the quality of theming and maybe the quality of maintenance seems way better on the waterfront side of the park, which is the lower level, which is more in the city. Maintenance is tricky, definitely, for a park like this.
The next part of the episode is actually grumpy minutes, and I would like to ask you if you have something that was quite negative to you and you would like to ventilate it here.
I would say that even though it's so important for Ocean Park in its offer, I don't think that in many aspects it's a great zoo. Many of the animal enclosures, they seem pretty bare, and they don't feel natural. They feel more like, architecture where animals are living. So it is showing its age a bit as a zoo. I think there are much better approaches to offering natural environments to animals. The aquarium aspect of it has the most potential, I think. But I, for example, I don't like the way that the dolphins were presented and the way that the dolphins live. But also the penguins and the Arctic foxes and the monkeys, I don't know, it just feels like it's a bit backwards, the way that it's presented right now. And I wonder if it totally stood the test of time when it comes to animal well-being, to be honest.
Yeah, that was my worry, if they are actually all right there, but it's hard, of course, to say.
Yes, you could improve that, but then probably the park would have to really pick a lane. They would have to invest in the animals, mainly, and not so much in the amusement park of things. Another grumpy minute that I would like to express is, I have to say that some things in the Thrill Mountain Zone are just horrifying. I cannot imagine that anyone would look at that and say, it's cute or fun or nice or beautiful. Like it's just ugly, and I don't think there's a place for that anymore nowadays in this current landscape. There is one thing that I remember is that if you have a fear of clowns, you shouldn't go to that zone because there's a couple of horrifying clown statues or paintings.
Let's move to the next section of our episode, which is the rating. And I would like to hear, how did you rate this experience in our theme park review form?
First, to clear things up, I rated the park with the theme park review form, which means that we rate it as a theme park. So that's very much focused on, the theming aspects of stuff. So for that reason, I think it will also score a little bit lower. I think we might have to introduce a form that also rates the zoo aspect. But as a theme park, it doesn't score very high. I score it around a 5.5. So I would say as an amusement / theme park.
Out of 10, yeah?
Out of 10, yeah. So 5.5 is on our form somewhere between neutral and okay. So it's between not sure what to think of it and was quite happy with it. And I think that very much describes or summarizes, I think, how I feel about the park. Yeah, I would say, it's not the best zoo. It's also not the best theme / amusement park. So yeah, it's somewhere around that mark.
And did it match your expectations as a theme park professional?
I think my expectation was that it was much more a marine park. So it would be more limited to marine life and marine animals. So it did exceed my expectations as to it has way more to offer than only that. But on the level of also the way that it's situated and the actual experience of being there on the mountain, it far exceeded my expectation. It is much more impressive, to be honest, to be there and to walk around in that environment.
What age group is, in your opinion, the target group of the park?
They do have, of course, a couple of thrill rides. So they do have this B&M coaster. They have a couple of thrill flat rides also. So, there is some stuff there for the older and the more brave. But when it comes to, I think, overall, the communication in the park, the way that they communicate around the animals, I think it's much more aimed for kids.
So it's mainly for the families.
Yeah.
There is something that we always do after a visit in a park or in a city. We always decide if we would like to visit that place again or not. And now I would like to ask you, actually, would that be a trip on? consider, or a trip off?
I would say, if you're in Hong Kong, for me it's a trip on. And I would say that mainly because of its location. So I think it's a very, very impressive place to be. It's a very nice way to experience the Hong Kong mountains. It's a very well laid out infrastructure / combination of transport systems to experience that side of things. But at the same time, I would also say it cannot compete with Hong Kong Disneyland as a park. So if you only want to make one park visit while in Hong Kong, I would say any day go to Disneyland.
Yeah, that's actually what I did, because I didn't have as much time as you in Hong Kong, and I only could choose one park, and for that reason we went together to Hong Kong Disneyland.
This is also a good option to walk in the mountains, because there is quite a lot of walking involved also. And then at the same time, you can also buy amazing caramel popcorn here and there, and watch some animals, ride a coaster.
See the giant panda.
Yeah, see the giant pandas, exactly. It's like hiking in the mountain with additional attractiveness, plus the end show might be very impressive. So I'm interested now, Alex, after you heard me talk about Ocean Park, would you like to visit? Did it excite you?
I would say it changed my mind a little bit, because before it was a trip off for me and I've decided not to do that. Now, if I would have more time, I would say it might be a consider for me. Maybe the giant panda is actually now the convincing point, especially that we don't have any in Poland. So that was maybe my chance to see them, you know. So what's next?
We were in Singapore, and I had a bit more time in Singapore than you had. I immediately, of course, was interested to visit Universal Studios Singapore, which is the smallest Universal Studios in the whole world. And I was very interested to see that. And I'm happy that I went. But I think it's also good that you skipped this one, because, yeah, it's not the best Universal Studios that I've ever seen.
And this leads us to the end of our episode. As always, our tip:
go on and plan your next trip.